Hey, it's Chris from Titan Timber Customs. Today I'm going to be making a new white oak picture frame for this service member's official photo from 1947. Here I am picking out the lumber that I'm going to be using. I generally don't keep a lot of white oak around, so I had to run out to my lumber supplier and pick up some white oak. Um, in the past, I have not been the greatest at choosing the right width to minimize my cutoff waste. I have historically used the cutoffs for cutting boards or coasters, so I haven't thought too much about it. But since I don't use white oak too much, I'm trying to minimize that waste so I don't have to deal with a lot of cutoffs. And here I am on the miter saw doing the exact same thing. I haven't been the greatest at estimating the stock length before cutting the miters, so I've started to write out the math here, just some back of the hand math to give me a rough idea of what kind of cuts I need to make, so that way I don't have a lot of 2 to 3 inch cutoff pieces. And unfortunately, with the miter cutoff pieces, you really can't use them too much unless they happen to fit like a 5x7, 4x6, or even like an ultrasound frame. But as with any lumber here, there were some bad knots here at the beginning. Uh, Generally speaking, you want to avoid buying lumber that has those kind of flaws in it. Unfortunately, my wood supplier didn't have a whole lot of white oak in at the time, so I kind of had to work with what I had available. Um, but that's no big deal. I mean, that's part of woodworking, is working with imperfect lumber sometimes. And instead of trying to work around it, I just cut it off. I'll probably end up making it into coasters, just to match the frame. I always like to give a little small gift with any of the pieces I sell, and usually I like to make it out of the same lumber. To me, it just is a neat little addition thing there to have another product from the same board. So here I am cutting the length, double checking my math here, making sure I'm marking the right length. This frame was going to end up being a 24 by 20, so with a 3 inch border. So we're looking at around 30 inches, 26 inches on the other side, plus, the size of your rabbets. So another quarter inch, half inch, just depending on what your comfortability is on your exercise. And again, woodworkers don't like to waste anything, so here I am squaring up the other end from the rough sawn bit, and I will be using that for some extra frames. Again, trying to minimize my waste. Another thing that I've not done in the past too well is marking which side is going to be the bottom. Even though I'm working with select lumber here, 4/4, it has a better and a worse side usually. So you want to make sure that the flattest side is facing down. It's going to be your reference. And even though they're fairly close, one side does have a small cup to it, so we want to make sure that the cup side is facing up. And because this is already planed on one side, I have just skipped the planer and went right to the drum sander. In my experiences so far, this is a new tool to me. It is a 2001, so it's a little bit older, had a little bit of work to it, but in my experiences thus far, using the sander before I cut the stock has actually been beneficial and helps in the finished product. You might be wondering why I'm tapping the wood onto a piece of freezer paper. And that is because sawdust is great at making a wood filler that is matched. So I have a bunch of color matched sawdust that I keep in empty formula containers. I found that those are great. You can see one sitting there behind the planer push blocks, Infamil, and I just keep one of every color. So again, because I don't use oak too much, I don't actually have any oak sawdust to use for color matching. A couple runs through the drum sander here. I have 100 grit, 120 grit on the backside, just to make sure everything's nice and flat. Again, one side is pretty much flat, but this also smooths it out, and I think helps me on the finish sanding. All right, here we have running the stock through the table saw, running it through a 3 inch border size here. If you are very detail oriented, you'll notice that I'm short on wood. I didn't add that part into the video here, but I realized after I cut those 2 runners that I only had enough for 3 pieces. So I had to go back to the stock and make some more. So this is the picture frame jig that I got off another YouTuber. It's fantastic. It is one of the greatest things you can do if you're making a lot of picture frames. The downside to this frame jig is that it maxes out at about 24 inches is what the ruler maxes out to, but because you have to put the stop block in, it maxes out around 23. So because of that, I do have to eyeball it initially, and here I am checking to make sure that my size is just about right. You know, we like to add about an 1/8 inch to the frame to allow for any expansion and just give a little wiggle room to the photo. So here I have confirmed that we are right on the money at 24 by 20. And sorry about this shot here. I am not the greatest at social media. I'm not the greatest at filming. And I stuck you guys up on the clamp rack, so you get a nice view of one of my clamps, and you get to see my newest piece of equipment. Here is my frame jig. I know there are a couple YouTubers who actually show you how to make this jig, but if you go on Amazon, you can actually pick up one made of aluminum for about 40 bucks. And I was skeptical about getting it because it was $40. I had been using the strap clamps from Home Depot and Lowe's, and they just weren't quite giving me the results that I wanted. My miters are very exact with that frame jig, but they just weren't gluing up right. So I used this once and had exact perfect miter glue ups, and I'm sold on it. I'll probably end up buying a second or third one as well. The only modification that I made to it is that I use a pressure clamp instead of the wing nut and bolt that comes in the middle here. That actually allows you to go much bigger on the frame than what they advertise, and it also just makes it real easy just to use the quick clamp. So you'll see that here in a second. Grab the quick clamp, and all you do is squeeze it, and boom, you're good to go. All right. This is everyone's favorite part, sanding. So not to bore you with the details of this, I just do a quick overview of the sanding here. I started out with 60, 80. I go through the whole thing, 100, 120, 150. Don't really have to because I did use the drum sander, but there was a little bit of glue there, and truth be told, I like to let the sander do the work, so I just go back to 60 and real quick work my way around. One thing that I've realized is that I cannot hear my GoPro battery when it dies because I'm wearing either headphones or pistol muffs for the noise. So what I did off camera there is I actually added a small 45-degree angle with my router. I did it on the outside as well, so I'm just going over with the hand sander real quick with 220, just to clean it up a little bit. It was pretty nice out of the router, but you got to get rid of those burn marks if you have any, and then any small ridges just in case. And moving on to workbench. Oh, I'm sorry. We got a. Let's go ahead. All right, here we have on the workbench, we are putting in the holes for the hardware. I don't know. I've kind of been on the fence on where to put these, so I usually just evenly space it across. Because this is a larger frame, I have been doing 2. I probably start doing 3 and putting the 2 outer ones closer to the edge, just because the weight of the frame can sometimes let a corner kind of push back a little bit. But nothing too exciting here. I was drilling a bunch of pilot holes. Unfortunately, this time the hardware kit that I got came with some screws that seemed to be a little softer, so the first batch I got, you didn't have to pre-drill the holes, but now if you don't, they will snap at the head pretty much immediately. It's almost like they're made of aluminum foil. So not too great, but as long as you pre-drill the holes, it's not a big deal. Again, I'm really bad about the GoPro dying on me. I'm skipping right to the workbench again, getting ready for the clear coat. You know, have to blow it off with the air compressor, get all the dust off, and then we wipe it down with mineral spirits here. Full disclosure, the battery did die shortly after this, so I do not get to go over the actual coating of the frame. I do use Rubio Monocoat for all of my products, except for cutting boards or anything that is used in the kitchen, although Rubio Monocoat is food safe. It's a fantastic product. Gives a nice natural color to it. I'm not really big on dyes, so this just gives a natural color. The mineral spirits just gets all any grease or oils that might be on it off, and just gives you a nice surface to be prepared for the final wax. And here we come back the next day. Again, I skipped the finishing process. The battery died and I didn't realize it. So we're just adding on the hardware here, just a couple, two per side of the swing arms that hold the photo in place. Started out with a manual screwdriver and then realized, wait a minute, I have quite a few tools and I don't have to use the simple screwdriver. Let's get the mechanic screwdriver. I lied. And last up here, I started to cut the backing for this photo, as well as the acrylic that will go into the frame. Personally, this is much easier than using glass. It's more shatter resistant, it's easy to cut. You can cut it on a saw stop without any issues. Obviously, you wouldn't want to cut any sort of glass product on a saw stop, or any table saw for that matter. And as they say, you want to measure twice, cut once. So you'll see me going over here and making sure that I'm cutting the right side. Last thing you want to do is cut your entire piece of acrylic and then realize that you just cut that same length to 24 inches and then cut that 24 inches down to 20. So now you have a 20 by 20 inch piece of acrylic. So measure twice, cut once. In this case, it worked out. The backing I'm using here, I've been experimenting with different types of backing. This is actually just a whiteboard from Lowe's. They were out of MDF. I've been experimenting with MDF. I've been trying different cardstock. These are pretty high-end frames, or at least I like to think they are. So I've been trying to get away from the plywood stock, or not plywood stock, the paper ply stock, and offer something with a little bit better quality. So again, off camera, I added a matting to this frame. I already got that